Welcome to the Tarot by Ralph podcast. And welcome. This is Ralph with the Tarot by Ralph podcast. We have been on extended hiatus. I love that word, hiatus, for a little over a year. And I was out there trying different podcasting services. I had the really wacky idea back in April of 2023 that I would find a better, cheaper platform for hosting, podcasts than Spreaker. And I found out that Spreaker is really one of the best platforms that I could find. And that the free platforms that are out there, man, they are about worth what you pay for them. And with Spreaker here, we get all the bells and whistles. I am recording this podcast right now using nothing but my smartphone. And I think the quality is really good, and I can really take the podcast off of the Spreaker platform. We've distributed it across other platforms, and I can put it up on YouTube extremely easy. So, man, I've just come to the conclusion that Spreaker is worth the price that they ask, which is really not that much in the grand scheme of things. And we've got the whole thing monetized, so I came back to Spreaker. And, we are just going to roll with this. But right now, the plan is that we'll be doing the Tarot by Ralph podcast every Wednesday. Now, today, this is going out kind of late, but from now on, it'll be every Wednesday. And then we may do supplemental podcasts, covering special topics, and we'll just kind of see how things go moving forward. But yeah, we are back. Now, in this episode, what I want to talk about is how tarot works. And this is something that, when I first started reading tarot back in the 70s, I got started, it was a couple years after the movie Live and Let Die came out. And I saw that as a kid, and I was watching, Miss Solitaire, and how she did the tarot cards. And I thought, man, it just woke something up in me. Like, I was familiar with the tarot, even though I'd never seen a deck before in my life, at least not in this incarnation. And so it just made me think, I need to get my hands on a tarot deck and teach myself how to use it. And so I did. I just went down to the bookstore after seeing that movie, bought a couple tarot decks, got them home, and started working with them. And it was just like, man, I'd been doing this forever. And so, I've been doing tarot in this incarnation anyway, since the 1970s. But if you were to ask me how tarot works, until a few years ago, I really wouldn't have been able to give a very good explanation. But over the past few years, I have done a little bit of research. I've done some meditation on the topic, and I've got 3 good ways of explaining how tarot works. It's not necessarily magic, although it does come down to a question of mysticism. But there are 3 explanations that we can use as to how tarot works. And one is just relating it to the archetypes. Archetypes in Jungian psychology is understood as a universal, innate model of personality or identity that influences human behavior. And it's like we all have access to the archetypes through the collective subconscious. And an archetype can be understood as something that lives, as it were, in the collective subconscious that represents an original form of something. Like there's the archetype of the warrior. There's the archetype of the king. There's the archetype of the Empress. There's the archetype of the Lovers. There's the archetype of the Mystic. There's the archetype of the Magician. There's so many different archetypes. In Jungian psychology, I think he identified 12, I believe, major archetypes. And there are so many other archetypes that you can identify. And one way of understanding how the tarot works is that you look at each of the 78 different cards, and you just understand that each card represents either a different archetype or a different aspect of an archetype. And yeah, the major arcana, you've got like the Magician, the Fool, the warrior in the form of the Chariot, the King, the Queen, the Empress, the Wise Man, which is the Hermit, and a lot of other different archetypes. And in the minor arcana, each of those cards can be seen as representing an archetype as well. So going from the standpoint of Jungian psychology, we can say that the tarot works by bringing to mind a different archetype with every card that we see. And once we get good at meditating with the cards, once we get good at relating to the cards, when we see one card, we kind of identify with the archetype that's behind that card, and we let that archetype speak to us in our own subconscious. And then as we meditate, we make that subconscious more conscious, and we allow this archetypal thought form or image, we allow that to speak to us by way of intuition. And that is one way that we can understand how tarot works, is that the tarot speaks to our intuition through the world of the archetypes. And one way that I really got good at doing tarot readings was just sitting down, studying each card, meditating on each card, and then relating each card to a certain archetype, and then allowing that archetype to speak to me. And so that's one way that we can understand how tarot works, is by doing a deep dive into the archetypes and then allowing those to speak to us through our subconscious. And the neat thing about that is that the archetypes speak not just to us through our subconscious. The archetypes speak to everybody through the subconscious. And we all have the ability to tap into what Carl Jung called the universal subconscious mind. And this helps to explain how it is that a tarot reader could know something about another person without that other person telling them. Like sometimes in tarot readings, we'll answer questions about, what are my job options opening up for me? What about my love life? What about my kids? We'll be asked questions about a wide variety of things. And it's amazing how sometimes you can deal out the cards, tap into the world of the archetypes, and give some fairly accurate responses to things that the reader knows nothing about. But we do have access to this information through the world of the archetypes, because through the cards, we talk to the archetypes more or less. We have access to the archetypes, and we contact the archetypes through the universal subconscious. So that represents a realm in which all of us are connected. And it's like the universal subconscious. It's like I'm there, you're there, other people are there. And when we enter into that world, using our intuition, using our connection with the archetypes, we can actually have a connection, establish a connection with other people, with clients, with friends of the clients, with other people that we perhaps have never met. And we can use the tarot to really get down and find out information about a wide variety of things and people and events. And, it does seem sometimes to work kind of like magic. But according to Jungian psychology, it's just we're connecting with other people, other realms, other experiences through the universal subconscious mind and the archetypes. And in that sense, in that realm, we are all connected. So that is one explanation about how tarot works. Just do a deep dive into the archetypes and understand it that way. Now, there's another way of understanding how tarot works, and this is doing a deep dive into what Napoleon Hill calls infinite intelligence. And this is infinite intelligence, which is the mind of God. And when you understand infinite intelligence, you also understand that there are other things connected to infinite intelligence. If we think of infinite intelligence as a spiritual source from which all things emanate, from which all things come, then you understand that infinite intelligence is like the divine mind that guides creation. It is also the source of all creation. So it's infinite intelligence and infinite source, and it is also the stuff from which all things are created, the energy from which all things are connected. So when we're talking about infinite intelligence, we can also understand that as the infinite source, the spiritual source of all things, and the stuff from which all things are created, or infinite energy. So in that understanding, infinite intelligence, infinite source, and infinite energy, you have sort of a trinity there that we can use to kind of understand how tarot can work and how everything else in the universe is connected and can work. You've got kind of like a unified field theory that's just waiting to be scientifically verified. And who knows, maybe by now some quantum physicist has figured that out. That's not exactly my forte. But you do have a way of understanding how tarot works using this understanding of infinite intelligence. Because in our intuition, we can connect with infinite intelligence. And once we understand that infinite intelligence is connected to the infinite source, and that the infinite source creates through its own divine energy, then we understand that all things are connected through infinite intelligence. So there we have another common ground. And when you understand that all things are actually energy, this is something that we've come to really understand since the early days of the 20th century with the exploding of the world's first atomic bomb, that, all things are energy. And where does this energy come from? Well, if we believe it comes from the infinite source, then, infinite energy is another aspect of source. And so with that understanding, we can see that all material things are but different aspects of the same spiritual source. And so to answer the question of how can a pack of tarot cards tell me about my life, tell me about my past, tell me about my future, tell me about any number of things that I may have questions about. How can a pack of tarot cards give me access to all this information? Well, if you see the tarot pack of cards not just as a pack of cards, but as divine energy coming from infinite intelligence, then there's no reason why a pack of tarot cards couldn't tell you those things. And when we see ourselves as manifestations of infinite intelligence, we all come from the same divine source. We are all made out of the same divine energy. Then, you can look within yourself through the practice of meditation and just connect with this source without using any external bells or whistles. No tarot cards, no tea leaves, no sheep's bladder or anything like that. Just go quietly into your inner self through meditation, speak to your own inner guide, and connect with divine intelligence that way. And when you see that all things in the material world are actually different manifestations of infinite intelligence, infinite source, and different creations made through infinite energy, then you can see how somebody could look at like a tea leaf and be able to see the future in that. Or as, who was it, Emerson? I forget who the poet was, but to see the world in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. It's like, yes, you can take things out of the material world and see the divine in those things once you recognize that we are all different manifestations of the same divine source. And so that's another explanation about how tarot cards can work, is an appeal to infinite intelligence and just recognizing that the infinite source of all creates the whole material universe or multiverse out of its own divine energy. And in that sense, we are all connected. We are all related. And once we learn to push through the psychological barriers that tell us that we are all separate, that we are all separate from God, we're all separate from one another, once we learn to push through what the Hindus and the Buddhists call the illusion of separation, and we learn to feel that basic unity that we all came from and that we shall all return to, then yes, you can see how anything in life could be used as a conduit to the divine and be used to answer questions that we may have about our life, our mission, our purpose here in this world. So that's the second way that we can understand how tarot works, is that it is a tool given to us by infinite intelligence, among many, many, many other tools, and that using this tool we can connect with infinite intelligence and understand things that other people would think we shouldn't be able to have an understanding of. Now, there is a third explanation. And this is more or less a psychological explanation, but this is one that is favored by a tarot reader that I like to follow, Vincent Patisi. And he says it's kind of like connecting with the archetypes, but he calls it that tarot is a way that we unlock our own creative imagination. And the way he sees it is that when you look at the pictures on a tarot card, it jogs something in your own creative imagination, and you are able to access your own creative imagination and just come up with answers that would normally elude us. And you can look at like he gives one example in his own practice about how a guy came to him for a reading, and he asked about a job interview that he came from. And he felt like he should have gotten that job, but he was denied that job. So he dealt out the cards, and the one card that came up that really caught his attention was the Chariot. And on his deck, he could see wristbands on the charioteer. And he looked at his client's hands, and his client had some wristbands on because of carpal tunnel syndrome. And he asked the client, when you went in for the job interview, were you wearing those carpal tunnel wristbands? And the client said, yes, he was. And he asked them, do you really need to be wearing those wristbands? And he said, no, the carpal tunnel was almost at that point cleared up. So he said, no, he shouldn't need them. And he said, call the place again. See if you can schedule a second interview, and then go back in for that interview without those wristbands, and I bet you'll get the job. And so the client did. He called up the company. He got another interview scheduled. He went in without the wristbands, and he was hired. So that is one example about how creative imagination can speak to us if we allow it to. Now, Patisi is a very good tarot reader, but he also tends to be, shall I say, a bit of an atheist. So he doesn't like the spiritual explanations. He doesn't like the explanation by way of infinite intelligence and divine source and things like that. But he is very comfortable with the world of psychology and the world of creative imagination. And that's how he understands it as a person that doesn't really believe in spiritual things, but he does believe in creative imagination. And so, yeah, he understands that tarot, how it works through that lens. And of course, with that understanding, you can see how that can work too. But it just allows you to access your own inner vision through creative imagination. And creative imagination is something that we all have. Einstein once said that, imagination is kind of like the king of the mind. And once we learn how to work with that king, it's like we can unlock all kinds of possibilities in our world, in our thinking, just by learning to access our imagination. And in today's society, and beginning in the age of science and the age of scientific enlightenment, more or less, so to speak, we really have downplayed the role of imagination, as well as the role of spirit and the world of the archetypes. So all three of those explanations have been downplayed by modern day science, but we are beginning to rediscover the power in imagination, the power in spirituality, and the power in the universal subconscious mind if we want to understand things through the world of the archetypes. So, there are three different ways that we can understand tarot and how tarot works. One is by studying the archetypes of Carl Jung and add to them as we need to, and understand that we connect with them through the universal subconscious mind, which links everything. We can understand it by way of infinite intelligence, a spiritual understanding that we are all connected by the same divine source. We're all different aspects of the same divine source. And so naturally, we can take a deck of tarot cards. That's an aspect of divine source. We can look at it. We can connect with one another because we're all different aspects of divine source, and we can get our answers that way. And then we have the school of Vincent Patisi and understanding how tarot works through creative imagination. And, in that way, we just kind of connect with our own imagination. We see things there that tend to connect us all because we all are, we all have the ability to imagine different things. And I think in the understanding of Patisi, it's like he understands too that our imagination, the world of imagination, can connect us all. So that kind of breaks through the barriers. And now there's a fourth explanation, because I got a comment on one of my YouTube videos about a year ago that in which the commenter told me his explanation of how tarot works. And that explanation is, this will be the fourth one, we'll end with this, it's a bunch of BS. That was his view of it. And I went back to his YouTube channel to see what he was into. Yeah, he was a gamer. He had his own little troll account set up with one video, which showed him playing video games. So no wonder he thought it was all imaginary BS. He lives in the gamer world, which is all pretty much imaginary BS. But it's amazing whether you believe in tarot cards or not. It really is amazing to me how you can go to a tarot reader, ask a question, and have the cards come up and be given answers that are more or less accurate. And the closer that you are connected to the reader, the more the tarot reader gets to know you and understand you, and the more you get to know and understand yourself, the clearer and clearer and clearer the advice is that the tarot reader gains from the tarot cards. And of course, once we get to know people really well, you don't need cards, you don't need tea leaves, you don't need anything. You can just look at them, listen to them for a few minutes, and then be able to tell through your own intuition, what's going on with them and what they need to do to fix things in their life and to help things work out better. But when it comes to tarot cards and how they work, we do tend to get a little mystical in our explanations. But I think the one that I really hang my hat on is appealing to the understanding of tarot through the lens of infinite intelligence, that we are all different manifestations of the same divine source. In meditation, we have access to infinite intelligence, and infinite intelligence can tell us anything that we need to know. And we can take our questions to infinite intelligence, and through meditation, by listening to our dreams, by learning to listen to our intuition, we can really get the answers that we need right there. And we can use a deck of tarot cards to get that information, or we can just go deep within and use our own intuition without any external tools and get our answers there. And that, in my opinion, is the highest form of divination, is just connecting with infinite intelligence through our own inner soul, through our own inner being, connecting with the infinite and getting our answers there without tools of any kind, just direct soul-to-soul communication. And that will do it for tonight. So tomorrow, next podcast, not tomorrow, since we'll be doing this on Wednesdays, we'll be talking about Tarot, the Guide Within, and using our own intuition to get answers through tarot. But before we did that, I just wanted to give that explanation. 3 ways tarot can work. And so I hope I did a good job on that tonight. Hope I didn't gloss over too many things. And if you want me to give a clear explanation of the archetypes, infinite intelligence, creative imagination, let me know in the comments wherever you're seeing this, listening to this podcast. And I will go back and in future episodes, we can cover that more in depth. But that does it for tonight. So, this is Ralph signing out. Thank you for dropping by. Now, my wife and I do tarot readings. We've both been reading tarot since the 1970s. My wife does it in Spanish, and I do it in English. And if you'd like to go ahead and get a tarot reading, you can connect with us at the website Reverend Heidi tarot.net. And I will put that link in the program description of this podcast. But yeah, you can go to reverendheidi.net and you can see our rates. You can see what we charge. And if you would like to book a tarot reading in Spanish or in English, we would love to talk with you. So until later, this is Ralph signing out. Our next podcast, we'll talk about Tarot, the Guide Within. Until then, take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.